I don't even know at this point if he wants baseball to come back or if he believes baseball. I know he wants baseball to come back. We all do. But now, of course, Jayson Stark at The Athletic, baseball extraordinaire, Hall of Fame member. Jayson, thanks for popping on this afternoon. And, of course, the big question is the 114-game season that the players are proposing. Is there any way, shape, or form the owners say, yeah, let's do it, boys?
Tony, that's not going to happen, man. They're proposing 32 more games than the owners proposed. The owners don't want more games. They would. There's a much better chance of 32 fewer games than 32 more games. I mean, there was some stuff in this proposal that at least gives them some things to talk about, but 114 games is not going to happen.
Well, yeah, and the other thing, too, weren't things going to be getting started at like June the 30th? That's impossible.
That is literally impossible. Like, I talked to somebody this afternoon who said, no way. Like, he used those words, no way. Just do the math, okay? 3 weeks spring training. Teams need time to get their facilities ready to meet the health and safety protocols. Players need travel time. Some of them are coming from all over the world. Then they need to report, get tested, and isolate for 48 hours while they await testing results. That means they would need to basically figure this out by, what, tomorrow? Wednesday?
Yep.
That's just not going to happen.
Yeah, we knew June 1st was a big day. We didn't think June 1st is the drop-dead day because, as I mentioned earlier, it's June 30th to October 31st, and then start a postseason in November.
Yeah, okay. Well, June 1st was never a real deadline.
No.
But it is a real month. June is a really important month when they got to figure this out. So, I mean, it really, literally has to be in the next few days if they're hoping to start even first week of July. I don't even think that is even that's likely. We're just running out of time on the calendar to do that. And, I mean, then you just get into all kinds of stuff. Postseason in November, Tony, I don't think the owners are interested in that either. I don't know this for a fact, but I would say I have a real strong suspicion that they have already met with their TV partners and been told we're not interested in the postseason in November. So if there's no TV interest, that's not an option.
Right.
Like, they may have negotiated that in the last deal, but if TV doesn't want it, they can't do it.
Yeah, and the owners obviously don't want more games. They want less, if anything, because the more games, the more times you have to pay the players, and there's no revenue coming in from the gate.
Yeah, right. Okay, so this is a way for owners to navigate through this. If players are going to insist on full prorated salaries, then, okay, let's do the math again. The prorated salaries for half a season, they come to something like $1.3 billion, maybe probably a little more. You have expanded rosters. You have 82 games instead of 81. But all right, let's say the owners have already done this math in their head and figured if there are no fans, the most we can afford to pay the players is, say, $700 million. So if you have to pay the full prorated salaries, their position would be, okay, we'll do that over fewer games so we pay out less salary. Then it gets into the postseason quicker where they'll get $1 billion more dollars. You can understand what's in it for them. So the question is, how do players respond if that's the proposal, fewer games? Do they want to play more games but give them a discount? Or do they want to stick to this idea that they can only get full prorated salaries? That's where we are.
Talking with Jayson Stark of The Athletic, and, the players are now talking about, I'm reading all over the place, that they want 50 games. Would 50 games be anywhere near? I mean, 82 seems decent, but 50-game season? That's even more absurd. It doesn't look to me like they're getting any closer to even getting close enough to start agreeing on something.
I actually think now you're starting to see some stuff that provides a vehicle for real conversation, but not one proposal that's been made so far would either side look at and say, okay, bingo, where do we sign? That's why June 30th, 4th of July, all these dates we've been hearing about, are in grave danger. Now, the question of what constitutes a season is really interesting because I've been saying all along, anything under like 80 games, that doesn't feel like a season to me. But anytime I've ever told that to anybody in baseball, they say it's better to play than not play. And to play fewer games is something they have interest in because the money is in playing a postseason, whatever shape that takes. The money is not playing a regular season with no fans. So remember that as we go through this. They're determined to play a postseason, whether the regular season is 80 games, 100 games, or 10 games.
How big of a deal is this where people are saying, there's sources saying that there's a group of owners that are perfectly willing to just shut the season down altogether?
You know, Harry, I think they want that out there, and that those teams exist. You know, this is going to be a season where there's no revenue sharing. Okay, if you're a small market team, you don't have much attendance anyway. To open the gates and have no revenues, a minuscule TV deal, and full salaries, there are definitely teams that aren't interested in that. And the question is, how many of those teams are out there? If there are enough of them out there to block a deal, then it's a real issue. If it's just something that MLB wants out there to increase pressure on the union to make a deal, then that's a completely different matter.
Talking baseball with Jayson Stark. And now, Jason, the thing that a lot of people don't understand, and most of us don't, you know, because we're not negotiators, but when you present a proposal like the players do, and they have to present a proposal, but then you put in there that they don't want to play, they want a percentage of the postseason opt-out, that if there's a postseason, they have the ability to opt out, and players who also have coronavirus concerns can opt out. I mean, who the heck would even think about that? That's one of those, hell no. Are you serious? That's not serious to me. That's what bothers me, looking at it from both sides. I'm not taking sides here, but the players' proposal is even more idiotic than the owner's proposal.
Well, you know, I don't know about that, Tony, but let's just talk about opt-outs, right? Whether players could opt out of playing. It's a big issue. And how this gets decided is going to have a real impact on whether there's a deal and how we look at what happens afterwards. You can't have a situation where you announce, all right, guess what? We've got a deal. We're going to play. But by the way, Clayton Kershaw's not going to play, and Bryce Harper's not going to play, and we have 100 players who aren't going to play. I mean, that's a terrible look, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's something that has to be worked through. Now, these players who are officially categorized by, say, the CDC as high risk, cancer survivors, diabetes, heart conditions, I think it makes sense to give those players the right to opt out because it's too precarious to say, nope, you got to play, and then some of those guys get sick. That's something they can have happen. This would be just like if one of those players in a normal season fell ill, they would pay them, they'd give them salary time. That part makes sense. But then anything beyond that, this idea that anybody can opt out and still get full service time, you think the Dodgers are in favor of Mookie Betts opting out, getting full service time, and then becoming a free agent without ever playing? I don't think so.
Well, they spend stupid money like a lot of teams do. The Phillies, stupid. Was it stupid money the Phillies' term last year?
Yes.
Yeah, stupid money's being spent everywhere in baseball, though, Jason. So maybe obviously I know what you're talking about, but that's really good. Again, I know people are never going to come back and watch baseball because that's the old argument. '94, we've been through this many times. The split season. In fact, you're the man responsible for the split season. One of the greatest tirades ever, right? From Dallas Green.
Oh yeah.
I'm not responsible for the tirade. I was.
You were the instigator of the.
I was the target of it.
again, you're right. You're not responsible.
No further responsibility.
No, again, I'm not trying to implicate you, but if you don't ask that question, we don't get one of the greatest tirades in baseball history. That's why you're in the Hall of Fame, Jayson.
But I did tell that story at the Hall of Fame.
You have to. People who haven't seen it, go back to the 80 after the 80 World Series. Phillies win the World Series. Dallas Green's manager of the Phillies. Mm-hmm. They come back. Things were going bad. Then they had to split the season after a work stoppage, and then Jayson asked Dallas Green, first place in one half, second place in the other half. That's how.
Tony, you want me to?
Yeah, go ahead. You explain. You were there. I just heard it a couple times, about 200 times.
All right. Well, even the strike hits. Phillies are the best team in baseball and the defending world champions, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. 2 months later, strike ends. Half the guys are out of shape, and there's a split season. So whatever they do for the next 2 months is completely irrelevant because they are going to be in the playoffs anyway.
Correct.
And the manager was Dallas Green. He was not a fan of the split bleeping season, as they used to call it. And we heard about it over and over and over again when his players came back because they had nothing to play for. He thought that was dumb. The only thing that gave him hope was he thought that his pitchers looked like they'd been thrown and were in pretty good shape and were probably ahead of the hitters. Then the season resumed. The St. Louis Cardinals came to town, and I don't remember the exact scores, but they get beat something like 8-1, 11-3, and then the third night was, I think, 9-2. Okay, so we go downstairs after this game. Nobody wants to ask a question. And I was that guy in the group who could usually get Dallas Green to kind of lighten up. I mean, I was young and innocent then.
So was I. You had great hair, and I had some hair then because I was covering the Phillies back in the. But you had the great tight curls though. That was great. That was good stuff.
It was no help that night. So anyway, I asked him. This means the pitchers aren't ahead of the hitters anymore. And his reply started, "Leap you, Jayson." And there was 3 more minutes where that came from. There were 42 words you will not hear on Barney. At one point, he went out into the clubhouse to make sure they were all listening to it, came back, and kept going.
I miss those great days because we see an occasional. Not that I want to see confrontations, but the Lee Elia and some of the great tirades by managers, and that's why you're in the Hall of Fame. Not just because you evoked one of the great responses, but because of your body of work, which is phenomenal stuff, Jayson. So, bottom line, are we going to have baseball? I'm putting you on the spot here. Baseball, yay or nay?
I just wrote an eloquent plea to Major League Baseball that basically went, "Do not drive off this cliff."
Right.
And I'm like 75%, which I think actually matches the odds, right? That they will figure it out because it's too logical, right? Who could, in this moment in time, decide it was a good idea to drive your sport off a cliff? Mm-hmm. Here's the only thing that worries me, Tony, is that there are people in the game who normally calm me down and reassure me, and they're not sure. And that's a worrisome place to be. We had one of the many, many, many people who checked in with me since I wrote that column is our friend Jim Cott, mm-hmm. right? And Jim Cott had a great expression. He said, sometimes it's not important to be right. It's more important to do what's right. And I hope everybody is listening. Do what's right. Don't drive off the cliff. Make a deal. The option is disaster.
Yeah.
No, I hear you. And with all going on, forget about, negotiations, which you can't because they have to do this. But the pandemic enough, and now the strife in the country, is this going to play a big part in how they proceed? I mean, they can still have communications and stuff, but won't the players even be doubly more concerned about going out and working out and trying to come back with all this uprising and crazy stuff going on? I mean, we just talked about it earlier, Harry and I. This may have been the longest month in the history of the world, or at least as long as we've been around. Was May not the longest month that you can ever remember?
It felt like way more than 31 days.
Yes.
Yeah. 1,031, something like that. The world's changing so fast right now. It's hard to say how any single event will have an impact on what's to come. I still think players I talk to, they mostly want to play. They're motivated to play. They want to find a way to play. And I think for that reason, they will play. This will get done. But there's just so much distrust between these two sides that they've got to overcome. Will they? Can they? I'm just praying, yeah, but I don't know the answer to that.
Last thing, Mike Trout, his wife's expecting it, but I don't know if she had it yet, how close she is. If these guys don't want to, if there's this opt-out thing and they agree to it and he opts out, should they play the season? I mean, will people say, okay, I'll accept that. He's having a baby and he doesn't want to come back. He doesn't even care about any of his salary. Will that be legitimate if you have star players deciding not to play?
All right, well, I have good news on the Mike Trout front. Just recorded the latest edition of our Starkville podcast, me and Doug Landau, with Joe Madden today, this afternoon, and I asked him that very question. Is Mike Trout going to play? And Joe said, oh, yeah. He's in this group of leaders on our team who are trying to get the group motivated and energized. So he's going to play. Pregnant wives, I'm not sure exactly how that's going to be handled. If a player has to leave the team and then be quarantined for 2 weeks after he comes back after visiting his wife in the hospital when she gave birth, I don't know if that's the way it's going to work. But I said earlier, if you have a sport where the star players opt out and don't want to play, and 100 of your 600 players don't want to play, that's a problem. It's just one more problem they've got to overcome, got to figure out, got to solve these things. This is a time in America to work together to solve common problems. Baseball is a very small problem on the grand scheme of things, but in my world, in our world, it's another really important problem that everybody needs to solve, because the look of not solving it is just about as bad a look as you could possibly imagine.
You think they pump in crowd noise at these games if they start playing them, Jason, like they're talking about with other sports?
Been talked about.
It has?
I don't know. I have like a bubble hockey game, Harry, where when I shoot wide of the net, there is artificial pumped-in crowd noise.
Yes, I remember that game.
There's no crowd in my basement.
I remember that sound.
love that
I can
game.
still hear it in my echoing in my vast empty brain. It's great stuff. How about just the sound of trash cans banging in every ballpark? Instead of the organist, remember the late great Paul Richardson would break out into "Take Me Out of the Ball Game." Just have repeated banging trash can sounds echoing through these cavernous big Major League Baseball stadiums.
Yeah, I'd be thinking now, will every team playing the Astros do that?
Absolutely. What about vuvuzelas? Somebody just pointed that out. How about
I
we bring
hated
back
those things.
Big Walsh says the crowd noise is like a muted vuvuzela buzzing. Oh man, I missed that.
There's only one thing worse than a zuzavella.
No,
vuvuzela.
Vuvuzela. Come on, Jason.
Whatever.
Vuvuzela. Repeat after me. Vuvuzela.
Vuvuzela?
Yes,
Yeah, that's
yes.
it. Didn't he play for the Twins back in the 70s?
Made a key error, right?
Yeah.
No, he did not.
Jayson Stark talking baseball and actually laughing a little bit, trying to get through all this nuts stuff.
Appreciate it, man.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Always
Thanks,
good.
Jason.
Let's put your hands together. This is real audience applause here from our studios here in the wine cellar in Ground Zero in South Philadelphia on a Monday.
At Jason ST on Twitter. Jason
He is
ST.
worth a subscription to The Athletic alone.
Mm-hmm.
You don't read anybody else on The Athletic. You read Jayson Stark. He's worth the price of admission. Let's play